Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Hunt. I'm the Chief Executive here at Pharmacist Support, and I'd like to welcome you to our fourth ACTNow Wellbeing panel chat. These panel chats are part of our ACTNow Wellbeing campaign, which runs for 5 weeks. It started on the 25th of September, which was World Pharmacist Day, and it ends on the 29th of October. So there's still time to sign up. Each week, we focus on one of the established 5 ways to wellbeing. So each of these sessions will bring us an evidence-based element of each of the wellbeing themes. So we'll be busting myths, sharing examples of wellbeing in action, and providing just a little bit of a taster of some of the tools that people use to support their own mental health. Each week, we'll be chatting to our resident pharmacist support expert, Melissa Cochrane, who will provide a science-based look at each of the wellbeing themes and why they work. Melissa has an extensive background in psychotherapy, counselling and wellbeing, and she joined us earlier in the year to help the charity develop our wellbeing services. Plus, we'll be inviting some special guests along to share their own mental health and wellbeing experiences with us. So today I'm delighted to join a few people to our panel. So we have Matthew Shaw. So Matthew is Director at the Centre for Pharmacy Postgraduate Education, otherwise known as CPPE, which is much easier to say. CPPE are the main provider of learning opportunities for the pharmacy profession in England. So welcome, Matthew.
Thank you.
And next we have Caroline Holmes. So Caroline is lead content developer and tutor for the PDA Education Hub. Caroline develops professional development and PDA rep content. Her role also involves co-facilitating on-live sessions with PDA members and reps. So welcome, Caroline.
Thank you. Hello.
So this week's theme is all about keeping learning. So I am going to start with you, Melissa, and go straight to you about the science behind this. So can you tell us a little bit about the connection between learning and well-being, and why is it so important for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So having an active mind, we know this can keep us healthier and happier, and it can lead to us having healthier brains. And in terms of the brain, that saying use it or lose it can really apply. So we know, for example, that retiring is a big risk factor in brain aging. So the kind of learning that can help us to maintain brain health can be both within the field of work, but also outside of it. So gaining mastery of something and getting into a flow state where you're really engaged in what you're doing and not thinking about other things. These can be very good for our mental and physical health. And this can be in anything. It can be learning to paint, to knit, to play table tennis, learning a new language. It can be related to your career. The other benefit to learning something new is that if you're joining a class, this can help us to meet others as well, which helps us with connection. It can help us meet people with similar interests and lead to a reduction in loneliness and stress. A review of evidence carried out for the Mental Health Foundation's project called Learning for Life found that learning gives direction to people's lives, or it can do. And attending adult learning can also help people to develop new friendships, as we mentioned, increase their social support network. So things that can help can be as varied as making regular visits to galleries and museums, learning practical skills like plumbing or cooking, taking on extra responsibilities at work. For example, learning to use new IT systems, if that would be helpful. Something where you're challenging yourself, you're learning, you're growing, you're creating new connections in your brain. All of this is really great. And it also can boost self-esteem when we learn new things. So that's really good for our mental health too.
That's really interesting. I think particularly you mentioned about aging, and I know a lot of people, when they come to retire, they often worry about, not using their brain and what they can do, and often get into old hobbies. But I mean, I'm quite interested in learning how can we age well? How can we continue to learn in a way that helps us to kind of age well?
There's a psychiatrist who I like, who is called Dr. Daniel Amen. And he's written a few books, and he says when you stop learning, your brain starts dying. So no pressure out there, but we do really need to keep learning throughout our lives. It's really, really important for our brains. And there are a couple of things that we can do that are really helpful, but one that we know is really, really good is learning another language. And learning a second language can have really positive effects on the brain, even if it's taken up in adulthood. What this does is it creates new neural connections and pathways, and this can help us if we're having decline in one area of our brain. our brain can be a lot more flexible in sort of making up for it by creating connections that go in different pathways, in different ways. So it helps our brain in a number of ways. A study that was done a while ago suggested that being bilingual could delay the onset of dementia by several years. And a different study found that learning a new language requires the use of extensive neural networks and can represent a powerful tool to reorganize brain neuroplasticity. In this study, they analyzed how a 4-month-long second language learning program led to functional changes in the brains of healthy elderly individuals. So you don't have to learn language when you're young. You can start at any age and really you can see the benefits in the brain. Another great skill for the brain is table tennis. So table tennis gives us a full brain workout. It's really, really good.
That's brilliant. And the language thing is really interesting because I suppose nowadays it's much easier. And my dad's just about to retire and he loves a Duolingo app and he started to learn Japanese and he does that every single day, but it's so easy and accessible. I'm going to come over to you, Matthew. Obviously, at CPPE, learning is very much your bread and butter. And I suppose as a provider of learning, what do you think learning does for us and how does it impact our well-being?
So I guess from my perspective, a lot of the learning that we're doing is helping people to know that they're good at their jobs and it gives them that confidence. And I think that when you're a professional, pharmacists, we are professionals. We want to make sure that we're doing the best we possibly can for our patients. When you work in the health services, things are changing all over the time, aren't they? And if we look back over the last 18 months, the pace of change with COVID has been absolutely huge. And so the work that we've been able to do in helping our colleagues in the pharmacy professions to stay up to date, to know that they're safe, to know that they're giving the best possible advice and care to their patients, I think has really helped them to gain that sense of reassurance and confidence. And I guess I don't know if there's Melissa, I don't know if there's a real thing to show that that is the case, but I know from my perspective, when I know that I've done the job well, when I know that I've acted the very best possible way that I could do, it makes a big difference for how I feel.
Definitely. And I suppose in pharmacy, you're constantly learning and there's always new knowledge. And I suppose when learners are gaining new knowledge, do you see the impact of that? Can you see the benefit of that?
Yeah, it's the well-placed confidence. That might sound a bit daft. I think sometimes we go into things feeling really, really confident because we maybe not aware of what we don't know. I think there's the official term for it is unconscious incompetence, that we don't know that we don't really know something. So when people come along to one of our events, they learn something new, they find different ways of doing things, they have conversations with their peers and they explore the way that other pharmacists are doing things. And they come out of that then consciously competent. That gives this real confidence boost. And I think, when you see that, when you see that light bulb moment for somebody, where they say, I can be even better tomorrow than I was today, that well-placed confidence in what they're doing is a great thing that we see time and time again coming out of learning. We had a lady got in touch with us a few weeks ago after the community pharmacist consultation service, tongue twister, event. And she said to us, I've been a pharmacist for 35 years and last night it all made sense. And that for me is the thing that it doesn't matter. I've been on the register for 30 years now. There's still stuff I'm learning every day. And I think for me that is that great thing. And it's that joy in seeing the change happen as well. It's lovely.
And you mentioned the pandemic there and the impact on people's roles in pharmacy, but obviously that will have impacted people's learning. I mean, what's that been like from your perspective?
I could look at the figures, I can see where we've been with regards to people's engagement with learning. And when I look at the figures over the last 3 years, the thing that absolutely astounds me is that it didn't dip last year. I would honestly have thought that with everything else community pharmacists were doing, the extra hours they were working, the pressure they were under, the ill health that they were managing in their own practices, the fact that they still made time for learning, I think it says so much. They knew they needed to and they carried on and they did it.
Definitely. Wow, that's unbelievable. I would have thought exactly the same. How on earth have people fitted it all in? But it just shows that importance, doesn't it? And I suppose thinking about you, Matthew, and away from the day job and what you do, what do you do to give yourself time to kind of boost your self-esteem and make time for learning?
So I was actually sitting there laughing. Melissa was talking earlier on. So I've got Duolingo on my phone, and for the last year and a half, I've been learning Spanish. Still not very good at it, but I'm trying. And we've got a table tennis table in the back garden. My son is like majorly into racket sports, like doing tennis, table tennis, and all the rest of it. So he just thrashes me and my wife. But presumably, it's still a good brain workout, even though we lose. The other thing that I really enjoy doing is making bread. And I think that there's something for me that's really soothing about not having to think, and just like pushing a big lump of dough around on the side. And
brilliant. Oh, thanks for sharing that, Matthew.
You're welcome.
I'm going to come to you, Caroline, if that's okay next. And from a PDA perspective, so I can see from the last few years, PDA has become very focused on learning, and in particular supporting the members with professional and personal development. What's prompted that new focus at the PDA?
I think one of the things that the PDA have recognised that the PDA members need they need two lots of learning, if you like. So they need the CPD, and obviously CPD is provided elsewhere, but they needed a specific kind of CPD. And they also needed support in knowing what their rights were as pharmacists. So one of the things that we try to do in terms of supporting our PDA members is we develop what we call a reps network. So we develop a reps network of people who are trained, who are trained and understand what people's rights are. So what the rights are for pharmacists, either employed or locum pharmacists, when they go into a pharmacy, regardless of where the pharmacy is, what their entitlements are, what their rights are, what should an employer be doing in order to be able to support them. Melissa and Matthew and you actually have all said that, talked about the importance of confidence. And learning, we know, helps to give us more confidence, because the more knowledge we have, the more confident we are in being able to have those conversations.
And it's really interesting because both you and Matthew mentioned in the learning that connection. And that's really important, having that interaction, and probably particularly through the pandemic, being able to connect with people and learn with other people has been quite important. And obviously learning doesn't necessarily have to be in a formal kind of classroom setting. And we all kind of have experiences to share, and this is part of why we're running panel chats like this, so people can share experience. But I know that's something you've been really keen to do within the membership at the PDA as well, and keen to get pharmacists to share their career experiences to help trainees, and particularly around the assessment being online. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you kind of enabled that, because it's felt quite important?
So one of the things we've felt, and the feedback we've been given from our members, is actually we want to hear from experienced pharmacists. We want to know what their experiences are. We want to talk to them. We want to ask them questions. So getting groups of experienced pharmacists together to share their experiences, I think, as you've said, is a really important part of the learning that we offer at the PDA, because we've got so much to learn from each other. Pharmacists, Matthew talked about, talking to somebody who I think was 35 years registered. We've got a huge number of really experienced pharmacists out there who can share their experiences, and also new to pharmacy. There are new pharmacists as well that have got different experiences, who equally can share those experiences with people that perhaps have been doing it for a bit longer, but they've kind of learned how to do it in an environment which nobody has ever been working in the last 18 months. So I think there's a lot of kind of reciprocal learning that we can do. And certainly our approach at the PDA is not just about, telling our members what they should and shouldn't be doing. It's about giving some tools, it's about giving them some knowledge, it's about building their confidence, and really importantly, giving them opportunities to talk to each other, create opportunities for them to have those discussions, share their experiences. And I think this has been a really valuable part of the Education Hub that was launched last year, which is a particular tool that the PDA has been using since the pandemic, really, to try and engage a wider range of learners and kind of broaden our reach, really.
I think definitely sharing those stories has been so important. I know when we ran the Act Now campaign last year, we were encouraging people to share their own kind of experiences of the pandemic, the mental health stories, what they were doing to kind of prioritise their well-being. And one piece of feedback that really struck me was just simply through doing that, someone felt less alone. And it was just reading the experiences as what somebody else was doing and feeling like, well, they're in the same boat, they feel similar things, I feel okay. And I think just encouraging that conversation has been so important. So Caroline, we were going to ask you as well, I mean, over the past 18 months, is there anything personally that has helped you from a wellbeing perspective?
Well, just wanted to say a couple of things there, really, if you don't mind me just adding something else in, because one of the things that we've done at the PDA is we've developed a series of equality, diversity and inclusion networks. And it's been a really big part of the learning that is taking place kind of informally within the PDA, if you like. And I think this has created a really good opportunity for people to talk about experiences, share experiences, who are experiencing working as a pharmacist in a particular way. So, for example, we've got the Ability Network for Disabled Pharmacists, we've got the BAME Network, we've got the National Association of Women Pharmacists Network, and we've got the LGBT Plus Network. So I think it's important to mention those, because actually those networks, and certainly from my own personal perspective, the networks that I've developed over the last 18 months, kind of the networks that were in place prior to the pandemic, have become a really important part of looking after my well-being. Activity has been absolutely key for the last 18 months. It's always been a part of my life. I run, but it's not everybody's cup of tea. I accept that. But also just being outside, going for a walk every day, twice a day, going for a walk, always going outside every single day, even if the weather is rubbish. And the other thing really for me is gardening. Absolutely at the centre of everything I do. I live for going to the allotment, for planting those vegetables, for picking all that produce. And that has become absolutely central to my well-being, really, I think, over the last 18 months.
And just thinking about the pandemic, if I can move back to you, Melissa, obviously the pandemic has had huge impact on lots of people, both positive and negative. And it has affected people's kind of well-being, self-esteem and confidence. How can we address this?
I think that there are a couple of things that we can do. And in terms of keeping learning, I think one thing that the pandemic did was it gave people time, because for a lot of people, this isn't true for everyone, but for a lot of people, everything kind of slowed down and there tended to be just a couple of main focuses. So a lot of people were able to take up hobbies and start learning new things, which is really good for mental health. So I think continuing to do those things is really important.
And I suppose we've definitely talked a lot about the benefits of learning, and you've shared some of the science behind that, Melissa, and we've heard about the impact. So if people feel quite inspired today to think about learning, and they think, well, what can I do quite quickly? Have you got any tips for what people might be able to do to kind of pick up learning?
Yeah, well, it really varies depending on interest. So if you have listened today and you think, oh, I want to learn a language, Duolingo is great for that. And it's something you can do really quickly and easily. If you are interested in well-being, we have our new well-being learning platform. That's something that pharmacists can sign up to. And we've got on there 4 workshops, 4 different well-being workshops that people can take part in. We're very excited. This is a brand new platform for us. Doing things in community can really help. So if you want to learn gardening and you have a friend who's a great gardener, doing something together can be really good. Getting someone to teach you table tennis or take up running together, whatever it is. I think if we can do things in community with other people, it helps us with learning new skills as well.
Yeah, and I think the wellbeing learning platform is something we're really, really excited about, because obviously before the pandemic, we used to deliver a lot of workshops face-to-face, and I know Matthew and Caroline, you probably delivered a lot face-to-face. And it's not just a face-to-face aspect that, because we've not been able to deliver, we wanted to move on. A lot of our workshops, people had to travel, they were at certain times. And what we do know with people working in pharmacy is it's not always 9 to 5, it's not easy to get out. So what we wanted to do was provide individuals with a way to kind of access this resource at any time. So finding a quiet time and going off and learning about well-being. And what's really good is there's lots of that science behind it. So I think just understanding our brains a little bit better can really then help us kind of put some of these well-being tips and tricks in practice, really, because we kind of understand the impact. So if you signed up to our Act Now campaign, you'll receive information about the learning platform. But I'd just really like to thank you all for kind of that input, because it's been really great to see everybody's different perspectives. And I think what I've taken from this week's panel chat is how the different areas of, well, the 5 ways to wellbeing really overlap. So I really appreciate your time today in sharing your experiences. I'm sure people listening will find it really useful. And I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. So like I mentioned, if you're keen to find out more, right across our wellbeing work, we do kind of are keen to stimulate conversation and share these tips, but the campaign is a really active way to do that. So if you've not already and you've not listened to one of our chats previously, you really do need to check out our Wardley Wellbeing Hub, because there's lots of information on there, and sign up to our Act Now campaign, because we'll proactively send you out some information. You'll get the latest wellbeing resources. You get to see these wellbeing chats. We've recently launched some new volunteer opportunities. So if you do want to give some time, you can do there, and there's lots of activities. And as Melissa mentioned, obviously you can then access our new wellbeing learning platform, which is a great way to keep learning. So I really hope this session has inspired you to take action. So to act now, which is allow time for wellbeing, to consider the needs of your colleagues, and really importantly to take action. So just make a really small change. So thank you for listening. Take care. Next week will be our final weekly wellbeing chat. And we'll be focusing on connection, but we'll be focusing on how connecting with others can give your well-being a real boost and can really combat those feelings of loneliness, which I know some people have really struggled with, particularly in the last 18 months. So tune in for that next week. But thank you, everyone.